The arrival. In a dimly lit observatory nestled in the heart of the Atacama Desert, astrophysicist Liam O'Connor rubbed his bleary eyes and took another swig of now-cold coffee. He had been staring at the data readouts for hours, trying to make sense of the anomalous readings picked up by the telescope array. At first, he had dismissed it as an instrument malfunction. But as the night wore on, and the strange signal persisted, a sinking feeling took root in his gut. This was no glitch. This was something else. Liam's fingers flew over the keyboard as he ran the data through every analysis program he could think of. The results were always the same: an object, or rather a cluster of objects, moving through space at an impossible velocity. And they were headed straight for Earth. With trembling hands, Liam reached for his phone. He had to alert someone, anyone, about this discovery. But who would believe him? He was a respected scientist, sure, but claims of an impending alien invasion were more the domain of tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. As he hesitated, a blinding light suddenly flooded the observatory. Liam shielded his eyes, squinting against the glare. His heart raced as he realized the light was coming from outside. He stumbled to the window and his jaw dropped. Hovering in the sky was a colossal spacecraft, unlike anything he had ever seen. It was a behemoth of sleek black metal, easily the size of a city. And it was not alone. Dozens, no hundreds, of similar ships were descending from the heavens, blotting out the stars. Liam watched in horror as they took up positions over major cities across the globe, their intentions clear. The invasion had begun. In the chaos that followed, Liam's warning was lost in a flood of panicked emergency broadcasts and frantic government communications. World leaders scrambled to comprehend the scale of the threat, while the public alternated between disbelief and hysteria. But amid the turmoil, a rare moment of global unity emerged. Old rivalries and grudges were cast aside as humanity faced an existential crisis. There would be time for recriminations later. Now, they had to fight for survival. As Liam watched the alien ships disgorge swarms of smaller fighter craft, he knew that life on Earth would never be the same. The Zorgans, as the invaders came to be known, had arrived. And they did not come in peace. In bunkers and war rooms across the planet, human leaders and strategists assessed their grim options. The Zorgans possessed technology far beyond anything humans had ever seen. Their ships shrugged off missile strikes, and their energy weapons cut through tanks like butter. But even in those early, desperate hours, the human spirit proved indomitable. Scientists and engineers pored over every scrap of data, looking for weaknesses to exploit. Soldiers and civilians alike volunteered for the defense effort. No price was too high, no sacrifice too great. Liam found himself swept up in this global mobilization. His expertise in astrophysics was suddenly in high demand as the world's brightest minds gathered to crack the secrets of Zorgan technology. In an underground facility, he met General Nadia Petrov, the stern, no-nonsense leader of the hastily formed Earth Defense Alliance. She wasted no time with pleasantries. "Dr. O'Connor, I am told you were the first to detect the Zorgans' approach. That makes you uniquely qualified to help us understand what we're dealing with." Liam nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. "I'll do whatever I can, General. But I won't lie to you. We're outmatched here. The Zorgans are centuries ahead of us." Petrov's steely gaze never wavered. "Then we'll have to adapt, improvise, and overcome. It's what humans do best." As the world outside descended into a war zone, Liam and his fellow scientists worked around the clock, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and innovation. They were in a race against time, against an implacable foe. Sleep became a luxury, food an afterthought. Every waking moment was dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of Zorgan science, to finding some chink in their armor. But even as the brightest minds on Earth strained against the limits of the possible, the Zorgan onslaught continued unabated. Cities burned, millions fled, and the death toll mounted. From his vantage point in the heart of the resistance, Liam could only watch in despair as the Zorgans tightened their grip on the planet. For all their efforts, for all their defiance, humanity seemed hopelessly outclassed. But even in that darkest hour, Liam and his fellow humans refused to give up. They had stared into the face of annihilation and chosen to fight. They would not go quietly into the night. As reports streamed in of valiant last stands and desperate holding actions across the globe, Liam redoubled his efforts in the lab. He would not let their sacrifices be in vain. The Zorgans may have had superior technology, but they had underestimated one crucial factor: the indomitable human will. And that would prove to be their undoing. For even as the world burned, the seeds of resistance were being sown. In hidden bases and makeshift labs, a plan was taking shape, a plan that would turn the tide of the war and make the Zorgans rue the day they ever set their sights on Earth. Humanity was down, but not out. The fight back was about to begin, humanity united. In the face of the Zorgan invasion, old rivalries and petty differences melted away as humanity banded together like never before. The Earth Defense Alliance, hastily formed in the early days of the war, grew into a true global coalition. Under the leadership of General Nadia Petrov, the EDA coordinated the worldwide resistance effort. Military units from every nation pledged their support, forming an integrated command structure that spanned the globe. But it wasn't just the armed forces that united against the Zorgan threat. Civilians from all walks of life stepped up to do their part. Engineers and factory workers toiled around the clock to churn out the weapons and equipment needed to fight the aliens. Farmers and truckers worked tirelessly to keep the supply lines running, ferrying food and essential goods to the front lines and besieged cities. In the realm of science and technology, the brightest minds on Earth came together in an unprecedented collaboration. Universities, research institutions, and private companies pooled their resources and expertise, forming a scientific vanguard against the Zorgan menace. At the heart of this effort was Liam O'Connor and his team of brilliant scientists. Sequestered in a top-secret research facility, they pored over every scrap of Zorgan technology they could get their hands on, reverse engineering the alien systems in a desperate bid to level the playing field. Breakthroughs came slowly at first, then in rapid succession. A way to jam the Zorgans' communications, a vulnerability in their shield harmonics, a flaw in their power core design. Each discovery was a hard-fought victory, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. But for all the progress made in the labs and workshops, the battle raged on in the streets and skies of Earth. The Zorgans, for all their technological superiority, found themselves mired in a war unlike any they had ever fought. Where they expected submission, they found defiance. Where they anticipated a swift victory, they encountered a determined, unyielding resistance. The humans, it seemed, would not go quietly. In cities across the globe, urban combat became the norm. Zorgan ground troops, genetically engineered for warfare and armed with devastating energy weapons, clashed with human defenders in brutal, block-by-block fighting. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, the human spirit proved indomitable. In the ruins of once great cities, resistance fighters used their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage, setting ambushes and traps for the alien invaders. They struck from the shadows, using hit-and-run tactics to bleed the Zorgans dry. These unsung heroes came from all backgrounds, soldiers and civilians, young and old, men and women. They were united by a common cause, a shared determination to defend their home at any cost. Among them were siblings Jace and Mira Kinkid, a brother and sister duo who had lost everything to the Zorgans. Their parents killed in the initial invasion, their city reduced to rubble. They had every reason to give in to despair. But instead, they channeled their grief into a fierce resolve. Jace, a former Special Forces operative, put his skills to use training and leading a guerrilla unit that became the bane of the Zorgan occupation. Mira, a brilliant hacker, worked tirelessly to disrupt enemy communications and infrastructure. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of the human resistance. And they were not alone. Across the planet, countless others just like them fought on, driven by a shared belief that Earth was worth fighting for, worth dying for. As the war ground on, the EDA grew in strength and capability. Bolstered by the breakthroughs made by Liam and his team, human forces began to push back against the Zorgon tide. New weapons and technologies entered the fray. EMP grenades that could fry Zorgon electronics, exosuits that granted human soldiers enhanced strength and speed, energy shields that could withstand the alien onslaught. Slowly but surely, the balance of power began to shift. What had once seemed like a hopeless struggle now took on the glimmer of a chance. The Zorgons, for all their might, were not invincible. They could be beaten. But the road ahead was long and perilous. The Zorgons would not relinquish their grip on Earth easily. They would fight to the bitter end, and they had the resources of an interstellar empire at their disposal. For humanity to prevail, it would take more than just weapons and technology. It would take unity, courage, and an unbreakable will. It would take heroes like Jace and Mira, leaders like General Petrov, and visionaries like Liam. The stage was set for the defining struggle of the age. The future of Earth, the fate of humanity itself, hung in the balance. And in that crucible of fire and blood, the true strength of the human spirit would be tested as never before. The first strike. The Zorgon invasion of Earth was as swift as it was brutal. The first wave of attacks targeted major cities and military installations, aiming to cripple humanity's ability to resist in one fell swoop. Massive alien warships darkened the skies, their hulls bristling with advanced weaponry. Swarms of fighter craft poured forth from their bays, strafing the ground with searing energy beams. On the surface, chaos reigned as the Zorgon ground forces made planetfall. Towering reptilian warriors clad in armor of living metal marched through the streets, their eyes cold and merciless. They were the Zorgon's elite shock troops, bred for war and utterly loyal to their masters. The earth shook under their tread as they advanced, energy rifles spitting bolts of searing plasma. Tanks and armored vehicles melted under their onslaught, concrete and steel bubbling and running like wax. In those first, terrible hours, it seemed as though nothing could stop the Zorgon advance. Human armies, caught off guard and outmatched, fought bravely but were quickly overwhelmed. Cities fell like dominoes, their defenders cut down or driven into hiding. But even in the darkest moments of the invasion, there were those who refused to give in to despair. Jace and Mira Kincaid were among them. When the Zorgons came to their city, the siblings were ready. They had seen the signs, heard the warnings, and prepared as best they could. As the alien warriors poured into the streets, Jace and Mira sprang into action. Jace, his battle-hardened instincts kicking in, led a group of survivors to a prearranged safe house. It was a fortified bunker, stocked with weapons and supplies, a rallying point for the resistance. Mira, meanwhile, turned her skills to the digital battlefield. From a hidden command center, she hacked into the city's infrastructure, turning it against the invaders. Traffic lights flashed erratically, confusing Zorgon troop movements. Power grids overloaded, plunging blocks into darkness and chaos. Together, the siblings and their allies waged a guerrilla war against the occupiers. They struck from the shadows, hitting the Zorgons where they were weakest and fading away before the enemy could respond. It was a dangerous game, a deadly dance on the knife's edge. Every engagement was a risk, every mission a gamble with their lives. But Jace and Mira knew that the alternative, submission, slavery, extinction, was unthinkable. And they were not alone in their struggle. Across the globe, pockets of resistance sprang up, each fighting their own desperate battle against the Zorgon onslaught. In the ruins of London, a group of survivors led by a former SAS operative waged a shadow war against the alien occupiers. They struck at supply lines, ambushed patrols, and gathered vital intelligence for the EDA. In the jungles of South America, indigenous tribes used their knowledge of the terrain to run circles around the Zorgon forces. They laid traps, poisoned water sources, and picked off the alien warriors one by one. In the sprawling urban canyons of Tokyo, a band of hackers and engineers turned the city's technology against the invaders. They hijacked drones, sabotaged enemy equipment, and wreaked havoc on the Zorgon's command and control systems. These were just a few of the countless stories of human resilience and defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. They were the sparks of hope in a world gone dark, the proof that humanity would not go gentle into that good night. But for all their bravery and determination, the resistance fighters knew they were only buying time. They could bleed the Zorgons, but they could not beat them. Not alone. Their hope lay in the work of Liam O'Connor and his team of scientists, toiling away in secret to unravel the secrets of Zorgon technology. It lay in the leadership of General Petrov and the EDA, striving to unite humanity under a single banner. Most of all, it lay in the unbreakable spirit of the human race, the refusal to bow to tyranny or despair. It was this spirit that had carried humanity through countless trials and tribulations, and it was this spirit that would see them through their darkest hour. As the war raged on, and the casualties mounted, Chase and Mira, and all the other resistance fighters held fast to this belief. They had to. It was the only thing that kept them going, the only light in the darkness. And so they fought on, even as the odds seemed insurmountable. They fought for their fallen comrades, for the cities and homes they had lost. They fought for a future free from Zorgon oppression, a world where humanity could once again chart its own destiny. It was a long and bloody road, paved with sacrifice and heartbreak. But it was a road they would walk to the end, no matter the cost. For in the fight against the Zorgons, there could be no half measures, no compromise. It was victory or oblivion, and humanity had chosen to fight, turning the tide. Deep within the Zorgon mothership, a figure moved through the shadows, their steps silent and purposeful. Captain Ava Singh, leader of the EDA's elite Spectre unit, was on a mission that could change the course of the war. Beside her crept Zilar, a Zorgon defector who had turned against his own kind. It was Zilar who had provided the intelligence that made this mission possible, who had revealed a weakness in the mothership's defenses. Ava and her team had fought hard to reach this point. They had battled their way through hordes of Zorgon warriors, using every trick and tactic in their arsenal. But now, deep in the heart of the enemy stronghold, the real challenge began. Their target was the mothership's central control core, the nexus of the Zorgon's command and communication network. If they could destroy it, it would throw the alien forces into disarray, buying precious time for humanity to regroup and strike back. But getting to the core wouldn't be easy. The chambers housing the Zorgon's most critical systems were heavily guarded, protected by the most advanced security measures the aliens could devise. That was where Zilar came in. As a former high-ranking technician, he knew the ins and outs of Zorgon technology. With his help, Ava and her team might just have a chance. As they approached the central chamber, Zilar held up a hand in warning. "We must be careful," he whispered, his voice a sibilant hiss. "The guards here will be the elite of the elite, and their weapons could cut through your armor like paper." Ava nodded, her grip tightening on her plasma rifle. She knew the risks, but she also knew what was at stake. The fate of Earth, of the entire human race, hung in the balance. With a final deep breath, she gave the signal to move in. What followed was a battle unlike any Ava had ever experienced. The Zorgon guards were every bit as formidable as Zilar had warned, their weapons blazing with searing energy. But Ava and her team were the best of the best, and they had a few surprises of their own. They had come armed with the latest breakthroughs from Liam O'Connor's lab, personal energy shields that could absorb the worst of the Zorgon fire, EMP grenades that could fry alien electronics, and more. Even so, it was a close-run thing. The Zorgons fought with a ferocity born of desperation, knowing that if the humans succeeded, it could turn the tide of the war. In the end, it came down to a final frenzied push. Ava and Zilar, the last two standing, fought their way to the control core, their shields flickering and sparking under the onslaught of enemy fire. With a final burst of effort, they broke through the last line of defense. Xylar lunged forward, his claws flashing as he tore into the core's housing. Ava jammed a breaching charge into the gap, set the timer, and dove for cover. The explosion was titanic, a searing wave of heat and light that engulfed the chamber. Alarms blared and warning lights flashed as the mothership's systems went haywire. Ava and Xylar, battered and bleeding but alive, staggered from the wreckage. They had done it. Against all odds, they had struck a blow at the very heart of the Zorgan war machine. As they made their escape, fighting through the confusion and chaos their sabotage had wrought, Ava allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. It had been a costly victory, paid for in blood and sacrifice, but it had been worth it. News of their success spread like wildfire, a beacon of hope in a war-torn world. In cities and bunkers across the planet, humans cheered and wept with relief. The Zorgans were not invincible. They could be beaten. In the Zorgan High Command, the mood was one of shock and disbelief. Never before had they faced a foe so resilient, so utterly determined. The loss of the mothership's control core was a staggering blow, one that would take time to recover from. But the Zorgans were far from defeated. They still had the advantage of numbers and technology, and they were determined to crush the human resistance once and for all. The stage was set for the final confrontation, a battle that would determine the fate of Earth and all who called it home. Humanity had shown that it could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful force in the known universe. Now it was time to finish the fight. The final stand. In the wake of the daring raid on the Zorgan mothership, the tide of the war began to turn. Emboldened by this victory, resistance forces across the globe redoubled their efforts, striking at the alien invaders with renewed fury. But the Zorgans, though weakened, were far from beaten. Stung by the blow to their control core, they lashed out with savage reprisals, targeting human population centers with indiscriminate bombardment. Cities that had thus far been spared the worst of the fighting now found themselves in the crosshairs. Millions perished in the firestorms that followed, whole neighborhoods reduced to ash and rubble. Amongst this escalating carnage, the brightest minds of humanity raced against time to find a way to end the war once and for all. In secret labs and workshops across the globe, scientists and engineers toiled day and night, pushing the boundaries of technology and innovation. Leading this effort was Dr. Finn Nakamura, a brilliant physicist whose groundbreaking work in zero-point energy had already revolutionized human spaceflight before the invasion. Now, he turned his genius to the task of devising a weapon that could turn the tide of the war. His creation was the Infinity Cannon, a device that harnessed the fundamental forces of the universe into a beam of unimaginable destructive power. In theory, it could vaporize a Zorgan warship with a single shot, but it was also incredibly unstable and difficult to control. As the final pieces of the weapon came together, the EDA leadership faced a difficult decision. The Infinity Cannon was untested, and the risks were enormous. If something went wrong, it could lead to a catastrophe of global proportions. But with the Zorgans pressing their advantage and time running out, General Petrov knew they had no choice. The Infinity Cannon was humanity's last, best hope. The plan was simple but audacious. A small team of EDA operatives, led by none other than Jace and Mira Kincaid, would infiltrate the Zorgan command ship and plant a targeting beacon. This would allow Dr. Nakamura to lock the Infinity Cannon onto the heart of the alien fleet. It was a mission from which there might be no return, a fact that weighed heavily on the siblings as they prepared for the final battle. They had lost so much already. Their parents, their home, countless friends and comrades. But they had also found something in the crucible of war, a bond stronger than blood, a shared purpose that transcended all else. As the EDA fleet engaged the Zorgans in a massive space battle above Earth, Jace and Mira slipped aboard the command ship. They fought their way through the vessel, a deadly game of cat and mouse with the ship's defenders. In the end, it came down to a desperate last stand on the bridge. Jace and Mira, bloody and battered but unbroken, held off wave after wave of Zorgan warriors as they struggled to plant the beacon. Just as it seemed they would be overwhelmed, they succeeded. The beacon activated, sending a pulsing signal through the void. On the surface, Dr. Nakamura received the signal and prepared to fire the infinity cannon. But disaster struck. The cannon, pushed beyond its limits, began to overload. Dr. Nakamura, realizing the danger, made a fateful decision. With no time to evacuate, he chose to stay at the controls, struggling to keep the weapon stable for the few critical seconds needed to fire. In a blinding flash of light, the infinity cannon discharged, its beam lancing out into space. It struck the Zorgan command ship dead center, piercing its shields as if they were paper. For a moment, there was silence. Then the ship exploded in a cataclysmic fireball that lit up the night sky. Across the fleet, Zorgan vessels reeled as the shockwave hit them, their systems failing, their hulls rupturing. It was over. Against all odds, humanity had won, but the victory had come at a terrible cost. Jace and Mira, caught in the heart of the explosion, were gone, their sacrifice forever etched into the annals of history. Dr. Nakamura, too, had given his life to save the world he loved. In the days and weeks that followed, as the remnants of the Zorgan fleet flooded back into the depths of space, the people of Earth began the long, hard task of rebuilding. The scars of the war ran deep, both on the planet and in the hearts of those who had survived. But they had endured. Through courage, sacrifice, and an unbreakable spirit, humanity had faced the universe's most dangerous enemy and emerged victorious. It was a story that would be told for generations to come, a story of heroes like Jace and Mira, of leaders like General Petrov, of visionaries like Dr. Nakamura and Liam O'Connor, a story of a species that, when pushed to the brink, had found the strength to push back. The war was over, but the journey was just beginning. As humanity looked to the stars, to a future filled with endless possibilities, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they always had, together, united, unbreakable. For this was the essence of the human spirit, the indomitable will that had carried them through their darkest hour and into the light of a new dawn. And it was this spirit that would guide them forward, to a destiny beyond their wildest dreams.